board. Awesome. And I will let Paul take it away.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. Some familiar faces. I think some of you have met at 287 Main in various capacities. As Sam mentioned, we have a perspective on the work that you folks had done, and in particular the grant programs that were issued. And I think some of what's driving this session was notifications that we got from Spencer before he left about, hey, we'd love to have you folks develop reports. Just being able to speak to some of the progress that was made. Essentially, the grantees, the folks that had provided the funding, were really kind of curious for businesses, for the different types of investments, and it varied a lot, based on the different types of companies. But in general, they're just kind of curious, hey, did it work? Was it helpful? So the purpose of the presentation today, and what Sam has asked me to kind of walk us through, are some of the basics on just how to look at the metrics and reporting and what to pay attention to when, in general, just thinking about the growth of your own company in the digital arena, but then, more specifically, maybe an eye toward creating that report. And Sam, remind me, was there a deadline for that we were all working toward? And I asked that, making it pretty obvious that I haven't finished it either.
So I think our goal is to do a quarterly check-in with this baseline report, really being a tool for you to take what works for you, leave what doesn't. And so we would be hoping to send that out, I would say, with the follow-up materials, and be looking at like quarterly benchmarking throughout this year. Autumn, is that in alignment with what you had discussed with Julie?
Starting one.
Yeah, I think about a quarterly check-in would be good. It gives everybody an idea to kind of see how their audience is interacting seasonally. And kind of gives you guys a chance to see peak season, off season. And we can kind of make decisions from there to help aid where you need to go.
And there was a question, when should we have that first one ready to go?
The first one, I have the email pulled up. Give me one moment. I think by like April 15th, we should have that first one.
Okay. So a couple caveats, not only about the presentation, but about the reporting. The funding that was made available essentially was just to try to help small businesses invest in and grow their digital footprint to help support the overall business growth. Each company used those funds differently. Some started an email campaign that they never had the time or resources to do. Some revised their website. It varied based on a lot of other companies. So what I'm walking you through today, some of this may or may not be relevant. You might not have done any work on your email marketing, for instance, or some of you didn't do anything on a website. And I'm also creating this presentation at maybe the 101 level. So this may be new for some, it may be a refresher for others, but essentially, as we're going through here, we'll try to capture some of the basics of what you might want to pay attention to. I'll also share a very, very simple template on, kind of a fill in the blanks or what you might want to share in those reports. And as flexible as this presentation is and how you were using the funding, I think the reporting itself can be very flexible. It could be screenshots, with just a couple notes. We're really not asking anybody to dive in and create a 50-slide deck or a 20-page, comprehensive report. So as we go through today, some of those examples, might be pretty obvious, and you might, hopefully the light bulb goes off where you're like, oh, I could show that, or I could do this, or whatever. So I'll take us through a PowerPoint deck, over the next maybe half hour or so, and I'll cover 3 different sections, one on website, one on social media, one on email marketing. I'll share that. It's essentially a Microsoft Word template. We wanted to make it as easy as possible, something everybody could edit or add to. And then, as Sam mentioned, happy to help over the next couple of weeks as folks are working toward that mid-April deadline. We'd love to make ourselves available for office hours. So because everything we're going to be talking about may or may not be relevant, or you may have specific questions, hey, I don't even know how to log in, where do I go and do that? May not be relevant for the whole group today. And so happy to have those sidebar conversations with you folks and help you get through. And I think once we all do the first one, establish those baselines, then to Autumn's point, that'll be good for us to be able to see over time how things are going. So with that, I will start to share the PowerPoint here. So you guys can all see this, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, and again, thank you not only to the small businesses, but there were a lot of other, marketing vendors that work with them to help set this up. And as I mentioned in my sort of preamble, we'll look at how we can measure. And the really neat thing about digital marketing, and I'm old enough, I've got the gray hair to prove that I was around pre-digital marketing. Yes, that's in fact wholly true. There was no internet when I started. My TV had 13 channels the way it's supposed to. We picked up a newspaper every day. We sent out mailers. And frankly, the downside to all that, with the exception of coupons, you couldn't track anything. You really had no idea. And there was this old saying, I know half my advertising isn't working, I just don't know which half. And so, unless people were reimbursing coupons, or unless you could actually know you ran the ad campaign during the week and people came into your store on the weekend, it was very, very difficult to track it. What's really amazing, and what I have a deep appreciation for now, is that all of this digital media has all of those things that we could really get excited about to know what's working and what's not working. Yes, it has all the voyeurism of, yes, Facebook knows everything we're doing and where we're all going. But as business owners, I think once we start to look at the data and know how to look at the data, it can be very robust. So we'll cover website information. We'll talk about social media and email marketing as we're going through here. So this overview of everything else, essentially what we're looking to do and report on is that summary of the activities. So what are the different types of projects that you've been working on? What's the data that can show those trends, and are there any insights? So for instance, if you're looking at your web traffic, and if you were able to track things before and after any changes that were made, are you seeing an uptick in more user traffic, people coming to your website? And if so, what does that mean, in terms of, and I'll show some examples. In fact, I have the Google Analytics for Seek's website, and with their permission, I'll share it with you. But I think you can start to see the kind of things and where we, start to look for some of those insights. And, again, in that report, if there's any summary of like, we want to learn more, we want to try something different, this isn't working. The nice thing about digital media also is that you could put investments out in Instagram and Facebook and realize that Instagram is performing better than Facebook. And so you might double down on Instagram in the future in terms of your efforts or dollars, and abandon Facebook. So it has the ability to be constantly refined over time, which is really exciting. So, so why does all of this data matter? What's really helpful, again, especially if you're putting dollars behind these campaigns, many of our projects were sort of transactional in nature. You might have updated your website, or you might have launched an email program. But for the companies that were starting to invest in more digital marketing, you're out there with Google AdWords, or you're putting ads out, you're boosting Facebook posts. By analyzing that information, I think over time you can start to look at your return on investment and start to see what's generating returns, where people are clicking, and are they buying products, or are they signing up for events, are they visiting your venues, all that kind of thing. So as diverse as the projects are that we all engaged, it's a pretty diverse group, in terms of, folks that are in, craft brewery and some of the retail. We've got venues, retailers, booksellers, it's a pretty diverse mix. So again, I'm really hoping to make this as relevant as possible for everybody. So the other things that we like to look for and we think are important, obviously, is the increased visibility. That's what it's all about. If you can stay top of mind and people know you're there, they can at least consider you and decide whether or not you're the right fit, or they have a need for your product or service. But if they don't know who you are, none of that matters. So by increasing that ability, by tracking your return on investment, targeting is also really helpful. A lot of these tools will let you know and show you what I call buying signals, as well as, people are visiting my website from Cobleskill, but I'm missing the folks in Middletown or whatever. And so it'll just give you that sense of how people behave, how they move through, your whole sort of digital ecosystem. So So we'll talk first websites. You know, the things that I want to look for, the things that I think are really good, and the benefits of doing this. Certainly the analytics, and I'm going to flip out of the PowerPoint deck in a slide or two, and we'll start to look at more specifics here. But the benefits of doing this, it allows you to look at who's visiting your site, where they're visiting your site. You may have what are called landing pages for different campaigns, where somebody clicking on an ad might go to a specific page, and you can look at that traffic. But keeping in mind that not everybody comes through the front door, as I say, the homepage of your website. Very often, because somebody might be Googling a phrase, they might come into an interior page and then start to move around. I think those opportunities are very interesting. Over time, we've seen clients who, have a lot of traffic through secondary pages, more so than the homepage itself. And actually, Seek has a really interesting example of that happening right now. So you can monitor user engagement. You can start to see at least where people are coming from, the types of devices that they're using. And that'll help you look at that third box on the top right, their journey through your whole website. Where do they start and then where do they go? From that, you might identify what their needs are. Very often, you might see that everybody goes to my homepage and they're only there for 15 or 30 seconds. There's a lot of ways to read into that, but very often people use a website like they used to use the phone book. I just want to go and find out what your hours are, or I want to click to call and ask about something or sign up for something or whatever. And it gives you a sense of what they need or want from your company. If you have conversions, if you have the ability to see somebody arrived at your site, then started looking for products and then purchased products, that might be on a 201 level. I'm not sure how many of us have online retail. The Google Analytics that I'll show may be different. And Sam, it just occurred to me that some folks on here might be on Spotify or Spotify, might be on Spotify, but Shopify, and using some of the retail commerce tools as well. Happy to do a deeper dive, or in some of the office hours, we can talk a little bit about, some of the Shopify analytics where you can see, using that tool and those dashboards, where are those conversions? Because ultimately, if somebody's not clicking to sign up for something or buy something, what's the point? And so in general, you can start to look at overall performance and all of that. And I think what's really helpful, and we're having this conversation now, most of us, I think, wrapped up our projects last fall. So we've got a few months of data under our belt, and this is a good time to start looking in and start to look at trends. Unless you've got a really aggressive digital media campaign happening, that you may want to look at every few days just to make sure something doesn't go awry. But in general, looking at something monthly, looking at something quarterly will really give you a better context to start to identify those trends and learn what you can from it. Some of the indicators and things to track, and you'll see these on the sort of rough template, fill in the blanks reporting form that we'll share with you. But what is that, number of visitors? Are you seeing your website traffic go up over time? And for the folks that are visiting, what's that average number of page views? Again, if they're bouncing in and out of the homepage, that may or may not be a good thing. But the more time they're spending on your site, exploring, learning more about other products that you might have, that's a great thing. The bounce rate, what are the pages that they're leaving from, is pretty important. Average time on the page, again, if you have a website that's very content rich, you have a lot of videos, you might have long paragraphs, seeing, let's pretend for a second you've got a page on your website and it's got, 20 different paragraphs and 5 different videos. But when you look at the analytics, people are only spending 15 seconds. That might tell you either the content is not of interest or the content itself might just be overwhelming. There's just too much for me to digest. Maybe I need to split these up into multiple pages. But again, it's really helpful to see over time, are people spending more time than before on that? If you have your analytics set up to track conversions, people arriving at my site, signed up for something, clicked on and bought something, or you can plug in dollar values for certain activities. If they, purchase something, there's a cost per acquisition. Some of that might get a little bit more advanced. Those last, couple bullets are really more toward companies that have their Google AdWords, or you've got display ads happening, where you're tracking pixels, meaning somebody might be on the Better Homes and Gardens website that accepts advertising, and my farm crafts and retail products might be perfect for that site. So somebody clicked on that. I know my cost per click might be 48 cents per, but when they got to my site, they bought a $20 to $5 product. A lot of that can be tracked. It's a bit more advanced, and we're not going to get into that level of detail here. But if that's what you're doing, happy to add those conversations to our office hours when we meet. Oops, sorry, let me just go back 1 second. So I'll show in a second the Google Analytics. I think that's probably the one tool that we might all have plugged in. And this assumes that you've installed it and set it up on your site so that you can start to track a lot of this data. I'll make that assumption and assume everybody kind of knows how to log in a second. I'll kind of share that with you. But essentially, just to give a sense of how it might work and how it might work in conjunction with your digital ads, Google has, as you probably know, and it's very handy for us as marketers and frightening for the rest of the world, but they have an immense amount of data to know all the different types of behaviors and history, and essentially they know all the things we're doing so that we're served up ads that are very relevant to us. That data is then resold to marketers as I say, I want to reach people within a 50-mile radius that might have interest in my craft beer. All of those interests and preferences kind of go into the data tracking. And so it'll use pixels and tracking codes so that it'll be able to look at the effectiveness of a campaign. So those, if you're typing in keywords like this example was fitness coach, you might see an online service, and that's the ad that pops up, and you can start to track some of that information in real time. Let me pause for a second because, I might have you drinking from the fire hose. Let me just see if there's any quick questions, and then I'm going to go over and share a separate screen and kind of walk through some of the Google Analytics. So having only been looking at my slide, I couldn't tell in general, is the entire crowd's head nodding up and down or left and right? So, all right, mostly up and down. This is fabulous. Thank you. All right, sounds good. So what I'm going to do is just kind of walk you through some of the basics on Google Analytics. And for that, our friends at Seek, I have their website up, and I'm going to show you the website itself, and then I'll dive into some of the Google Analytics. So when you were to go to Seek's website, seekny.org, this is what you would see. They've got a lot of activity happening. There are different, sections of the site, much like yours, different, things that are happening, initiatives. And in particular, one of the things that you'll see scroll, and it should pop up on the screen, I think next, or I'll cheat it to happen, is recently a project that Seek had been involved in, helping to raise awareness for a proposed development project on Route 30A. And here's the view of it. If you were to click through their site, you would come to a page like this, and it talks about the economic impact for this potential project. It's being proposed as a larger warehouse. And over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of conversations about it. Hey, if you want to learn more about this project, if you'd like to sign a petition for support, if you'd like to know about the tax implications or the jobs that might be created, there have been a lot of conversations around, hey, learn more about this project, come to some of the public hearings and all of that. Those public hearings were happening on March 21st. And so the reason I mention that is just to give you a context of the website we're looking at. So to go back a second, it's all about Seek, but recently Seek has been, talking about this particular project. So now let's look into their Google Analytics. Let's pretend for a second we're logging in and we're looking at their Google Analytics. So this is what your typical dashboard looks like. At the top, it'll say, okay, here I am at Seek's website. And what I've done here is look at the time frame. And this can be really interesting. And this is where I think things get, really helpful. If your analytics were plugged in before you redid your website, I think it's really good to look at, okay, let's look at the last year, but know that I updated my website in August. And so what's happening before or after some of those major events? So in this case, I just typed in a September 1st through March 29th timeframe. And I'll show you this in general, and then we'll kind of just go through some of these things. But if you were to generate a report, and again, this is exactly the kind of example that Seek would love to see in the reports that we share, you could take a screenshot of this and say, you know what, I never had a website, before. And so from the time I launched it on September 1st to now, here's what's happening. And in general, I might start to see a modest amount of growth over that period of time. You can start to see that they've had, 2,300 new users and new users, and their Google Analytics were only added around that same time frame. So I don't have anything prior to September 1st. But it looks like the average time somebody's spending on the site is about 1.5 minutes. There are no retail campaigns set up. So we're not saying to Google, hey, I've got an ad that I'm putting out, and if somebody signs up to, attend this event or buy this product, here's how many, pennies I paid for the click and how many dollars I made for the sale. So we don't have any revenue data. Right now, in the last 30 minutes, there was, and I'm not sure if I've refreshed this or not, but there was one user on the website or whatever. But as I look at this over time, as a marketer and as a business owner, you would really want to know what happened on September 29th. And in particular, hey, Paul, there's that activity you mentioned on March 21st. There was a big spike in web traffic. So this is the traffic to the site. What does it take to get people to go to Seek's website? Well, promote an event, educate or inform the public about a new proposed project. And when Seek promotes it, turns out people go to their website to find out. And it's those things over time that are really helpful. Again, for the sake of your report, this might be the kind of thing where you would just put in a screenshot and say, hey, in general, my website has steady traffic. It might be growing a little bit, but maybe not. You see a lot of peaks and valleys here. Well, Seek is an economic development agency. They're kind of a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday kind of company. So I would bet that, yeah, look at those valleys. Those are Saturdays and Sundays, so it turns out nobody goes to their website on the weekends, and they really visit the site when there's new things like a proposed project. All of those things, when I look at this over time, I really want to know what moves needles. Why do things spike up? Why is it not a steady traffic over time? From there, that alone could be more than enough for a report as you start to just understand the traffic patterns. Why do people come to my site? When do they come to my site? And if I see a spike, I certainly want to increase traffic. How can I reproduce that? How can I constantly get more and more people coming to my site? I think that's really, really helpful. This will tell you a little bit here about, people coming direct versus Google. So in this case, and because a lot of this traffic, for them, they may be generating e-blasts or putting things out on social media saying, here it is. And you'll start to see, where people would come from. What parts of the world are people coming from? There are different areas. It looks like the majority of the users are coming from the United States, but there are some people from Russia. There are some people from China. There's a saying right now, there are two types of companies who have been hacked by Chinese and Russian based organizations, or companies that don't know that they've already been hacked by Chinese and Russian based organizations. I mentioned that not to cast doubt and fear, but to explain why there's a lot of traffic coming from places. Why would somebody in Russia want to know what's happening in Schoharie County? And as a reminder, there are a lot of tools that you can use, especially if your website's on things like WordPress, if that's the engine that's sort of running your website or helping to create the site. Make sure, set a note on your calendar quarterly just to go back to your web person, or if it's you, just to make sure that those plugins and everything for WordPress is updated, and that'll minimize hacking kind of things. I bet that could be its own session or whatever. Here's activity over time and how are things trending over the last 30 days, 7 days, the last day, et cetera. What are the different pages that people are going to, for different page rankings. And in general, that's what's happening on this sort of report snapshot here. There's actually a real-time tab, so you can see right now, who is on the site and where are they coming from. It looks like there's somebody in Westerville that over the last few minutes was on the site, and it would be really fun if you're all at your computers, dive in and start looking at the site. I want to see if you guys all pop up here. But it's kind of neat. Again, you know, it can or cannot be helpful depending on how large your company is. Sometimes that's really just interesting to know where people are coming from or happening in real time. So over on the left side here, there's a couple different tabs. The acquisition tab, where does traffic come from? When people visit my site, where are they coming from? So again, you'll start to see some of this same data here because I've got the same time frame proposed. Here you'll start to learn that people are coming directly to the site versus they're coming through an organic search. They're Googling Highbridge development project maybe and typing that in. Referrals mean they might be clicking from another source, and that's what's bringing them to the site itself. So we don't have any of the retail stuff happening here to determine the value of that. So user acquisition, again, here it is now plotted out in terms of who came direct versus organic search versus referrals, organic social. So this is interesting. If you were to look at that chart that we saw before, and I'm seeing this for the first time, I haven't dove in this deeply, but this is the direct traffic. People might have clicked on an e-blast or social media and come to the site, especially because we're seeing that spike at the end of March about that Highbridge project. But over here, organic social, people are finding you through social media, not a paid social media ad, but maybe there was a post that was out on LinkedIn or Instagram someplace that was just talking about something anyway. Again, it's not anything we were boosting or putting dollars behind, but it would raise the question, and Sam, I can't remember if you would even know, if we're, you know, I'm just putting you on the spot here, but do we know what happened on September 29th? You know, not a tremendous amount of traffic, but did we put a social post out and what might it have said? And again, these are the kind of things that I love to learn. You know, what did we do then so we can do more of it and get more people to our website?
Yeah, I do
Does it
remember.
ring any bells?
The
Yeah, I don't
Times
remember either.
Union picked up a story about us launching our co-working space, and they posted it on their social media.
Yeah, great,
On
perfect.
faces.
Right, there you go. So the 287 space was launched. Times Union shared their own article on their own Facebook, and that might have been what was resulting in a lot of that traffic. So, so again, you know, some of this can be very interesting. Feel free to copy and paste some of these charts and you know, even just to show what's happening over time. Engagement, this data starts to show you a little bit more about the average time people are spending on their site, on your site, and pretty similar to what we had talked about before, the different type of page counts and that kind of thing. I'm not sure how much, you know, this will be helpful. Going into monetization, again, if you don't have e-commerce set up, if your AdWords aren't hardwired into your site or anything else, it might be more than we have time for today, but we can certainly talk about that a little bit. Demographics get pretty interesting. Here's an overview on it. Again, here's where people are coming from during this time period. So from September through March, the vast majority from the United States. And here are some different, you know, Cobleskill, New York City, Coxsackie, you know, Schoharie, et cetera. That can be very helpful on some of this. We don't have gender and age data plugged in to this yet, which means this next tab won't have too much either. Yeah, I think this is just more detail on some of that. Let me just pause for a quick second. Referral section. In the refer to in the user acquisition section. So referral is where the traffic comes from. Was that your question? Was it in the user acquisition?
So it says like organic search, obviously that's like when they search you out.
Yep.
Social is when they get it from social, email from email. What is referral?
Referral would be a link from any other type of source.
Not email, not social.
No, it could actually, so direct would probably be your emails. If you sent out an e-blast, that would be a direct link from something else. Referral might be a link from another website or another page. And And again, let me put Sam on the spot for a second here, Sam, but I've got a date here, January 9th. We had some pretty high referral traffic there, but not sure if, again, it's really small data points. I'm not sure if we would know. Did somebody else link to us about something? Did somebody go to the Daily Gazette website to link over to us? Anything else like that? I'm not sure if it rings any bells. It's kind of small data there.
Yeah, that one doesn't ring any bells. We call them like reciprocal links. That's another industry term for it. You're like backlinking could be another way that you can hear it talked about. Really good to just like cross promote links on as many websites as possible. It helps push you up in organic search results in Google search. So.
Yep. And then there's a tech section here, a bit of an overview. This will show you what type of devices people are coming from, Windows versus Mac iOS, Mac desktop, what's that mix of desktop and mobile. So again, thinking about Seek is a business to business type of organization. Not surprising to me that, you know, probably 2/3 of their traffic is coming from desktop computers versus mobile or iPads or tablets. If I were a retailer, if I were an event venue, I would want to see a lot more folks on mobile. You know, just because I think that's where people are engaging. You know, this is more of a formal business setting that we're in right now. Many of us are on phones, but I think, you know, we're doing our work at a desktop in many cases. So for Seek, that makes sense. That's you know, probably something that would be pretty predictable. The rest of this may or may not be as relevant, you know, what browsers are people using, et cetera. But again, as you're working with your web developer, just to make sure your site is optimized, it's really good to know, you know, are we optimized for Chrome, for this, you know, screen size, you know, all of that will help improve the user experience in general, you know, for the site itself. So, but again, I think, you know, where I would start in general is this report snapshot. You know, if you're on that page, look at the time period, get a sense of how things are trending over time, ask yourself, what moves the needle upward? Why am I not seeing anything? What happens in these valleys here? Saturdays and Sundays, not very popular on the Seek website, and not surprising. I could probably do, you know, 80 hours on this and certainly dive a lot deeper into some of these other aspects. But let me just pause there for a second. I want to make sure we have time to cover social media and email as well. Any questions about that before I move on? There's also a video that I'll share. I was going to embed it and play excerpts from it in this meeting. It's about a 6 or 8 minute video, and it covers a lot of what I just talked about here in some more detail, and you know, maybe a little bit more articulate than I am on this as well. So let me go back to the PowerPoint deck here. And so with that half hour or so we've got left, I'll walk through social media and email marketing as well. So again, like social media, I think it can help you to look at all of these different things. You know, what's the user engagement? What's the customer journey like? How can you track conversions? How's your site performing overall? And the things you might want to look for. And again, this is going to be, you know, again, very, very diverse. You know, Facebook, Instagram, still the 800-pound gorilla. You know, it certainly may not be as fashionable as TikTok and some other platforms, but it has the majority of the lion's share for, you know, user activity. But again, we're a pretty diverse group on this call, so we may be all over the place on different platforms. So logging into whatever that you know, user dashboard for Facebook, it has the insights page. That's where you can start to look at, you know, again, those trend charts over time. And here again, like we did and like we saw on the Google Analytics, the looking at those charts, finding that time period, you know, in this case, say a September 1st through March 29th, you know, did the number of followers and likes go up? Did the number of comments go up? You know, what were the number of shares and the engagement rate? You know, all of that, I think, And again, for all of us as small businesses, it would be really, really helpful just to see, are more people liking and following, and then over time, are more people commenting? When you look at the insights page, even for something like Facebook, you can start to see, what posts perform better than others, what got more likes, what got more clicks, what got more comments. That's the kind of stuff I like to look at monthly. And for me, it helps optimize what we're going to talk about the next month. I don't want to keep sending out the same content if nobody wants to hear about it. If I'm posting about, my craft brew stouts and nobody's really commenting, but I'm putting out about a hazy IPA and everybody's reacting to it and they're chatting and they're sharing it, that can tell me more about what people want to talk about and possibly be an indication of, what's the product line and what should I be, creating more of. And again, just like Google Analytics, having this screenshots, just looking at, tracking things over time, looking at where those spikes are, I think can be very helpful overall. For Facebook, for instance, and I just put some screenshots on here, you can start to see, what were the views on my page? What are the likes over time? What are the post engagements, in whatever time period? Is it going up or down? How many people am I reaching? The reach, it can be bigger than the folks that like you, because someone might comment on something, their friends might see that comment. If you're boosting posts beyond your current followers and you're putting some dollars behind it, Facebook has all those, where do you want to find people, and what are their, what's the profile that you'd like to try to attract in terms of demographics. All of that can help you determine what the reach is on your site itself or on your Facebook over time. For email marketing, again, monitoring the user engagement and the journey and what their needs are, all of this is just, essential and really important. Most of us are probably using tools like Constant Contact or MailChimp. You might start to see a dashboard that looks like this. If you look at a particular email, you'll see, okay, I sent it to a list of 5,482 people. And sorry for this, what you'd be looking at is when you dial into the report section, and this is an excerpt from a client that we were working on, went into their dashboard and said, okay, how'd that last email do? Again, take a screenshot of something like this, or I'll show you in a second, looking over time. My last e-blast went to almost 5,500 people. It had a 21% open rate, but about a 1% click rate. Not great, but for the type of content and the audience we're trying to engage, it's actually not awful. In general, I really don't care who opens it. What I really want to look at are things like the clicks. In fact, there's probably nothing else that I pay attention to but that. I want to see who's engaging in my content. And for that, we set up our e-blasts so that I don't tell the entire story in the e-blast. I put a little piece of the story. Here's a headline, couple sentences, click here to read more. I put the content on my website so that I have those stories being told on my website, but also so that I can see who wants to read the rest of the story, who's clicking to register, to sign up for something, to read the rest of the story, to watch a video that I might be directing them to. That's the stuff I think is really, really rich. And again, with all that digital voyeurism that's out there, you can also click on that link, this thing here out of these 28 people that clicked, and it'll give you the list of the email addresses. It'll tell you that, it's this email address that clicked on this link, which brought them to this website, and here's the date and time that they did this. Sometimes that can be very helpful. If I have people that I want to register for an event and I see 50 people clicked on it, but only 30 signed up, I might want to go back to those other 20 and say, hey, just want to follow up. I sent an email recently and you might have expressed an interest in attending our event. Maybe you got busy, the dog barked, the phone rang, or maybe you saw your calendar, you're not available that day, but we'd love to help you out and see if you can, if we can help you sign up for this event. Again, those are the buying signals that I think are really, really important. And if you're doing email marketing, that I think just to get a sense of over time, and both of these platforms, Constant Contact and MailChimp, will both show you over time who are the super users, who are the folks that are constantly engaging your content, And aside from your mom and dad or husband and wife, you know, who always click on everything, you know, who are those prospective customers that really want to pay attention to what you're doing? You know, if you're announcing a new product or you know, something that's exciting that's happening at your venue, you know, who are the people that really want to read about it and see it? And maybe you segment that list a little bit. Maybe they get something special. They, you know, get invited to a preview something or a you know, tasting at your craft brewery or something that not everybody got an opportunity to do. So the things to track, again, I think, you know, the number of clicks and opens are good. You know, what are those click-through rates? Unsubscribe rates. You know, you may have folks that say, in this case, 5 people out of our list of 5,500 said, yeah, take me off your list. And they may have moved on. It might not be relevant anymore. They may work someplace else where they don't need it. Thankfully, nobody reported us for spam and said, I never signed up for it. This stuff is garbage. So thankfully, you know, that number was pretty low. And that's something you have to be, you know, pretty careful about. Actually, it's worth paying attention to that over time. This is just a screenshot from one eBlast. What I'm going to show on this slide is, again, you know, here's 5 different, you know, or 4 recent emails. You know, this was the March newsletter. Here was a, you know, webinar on demand. Here's the February newsletter. Here's a still time to register. And, you know, again, looking at that over time, you know, pretty much sending it to the same size lists. My open rates are pretty, you know, consistent in the low 30%. You know, how are my click rates doing over time? You know, sometimes even just taking a screenshot of this is more than enough, you know, and especially for the reports to say, you know, hey, it looks like we're holding steady on our open rates or our click rates are growing a little bit. Again, all this data is available on those dashboards for the different tools that you've got anyway. Over time, you can also start to look at, and I just pulled some screenshots from Constant Contact, over a 6-month period of time to that same list of 5,000 people, we can start to look at, okay, what's our open rate, our unopened rate, our click-through rate, our bounce rate. You know, that's in terms of, you know, the things we're sending. So from the folks that we're sending, and this is a lobbying and law firm client, 95% are doing it on their desktop. Well, we know that people probably won't care about this content on Saturday morning. It's just not what they cozy up to on the couch on a crisp winter night or morning. So, you know, when we're sending eBlasts on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. or Thursdays at 2 p.m., not surprising, you know, they'll, you know, of the folks that are opening it, they're reading it on their desktop, you know, almost entirely. And, you know, they're clicking on it from their desktop more so than mobile. There were some instances where we found that there were, of the people who clicked, we had a higher percentage that clicked from a mobile device than the open device. And that actually kind of said to me, hey, it looks like people, you know, that really like our content will read us on the go, you know, whether they're just in their daily lives, they'll, oh, hey, I wonder what's going on here. Let me do this. So it was kind of interesting to learn that the super users will engage us outside of their normal 9-to-5 environment. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So in terms of creating reports, and with the few minutes we've got left, you know, just one of the things that I wanted to talk about and share, and I think I'll jump off. I'm not sure what else I have here, but yeah, all right, let me do this first. So how to get started. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, not all this information is going to be relevant to everybody. But you know, before you get down ready to start do this, you know, get a list of that assets, you know, that you have. All right, I got a website, I've got social media, I use Constant Contact, whatever it is. Got all your logins and passwords, great. What's that time frame for reporting? You know, if it's really new, if you just launched your website last month, maybe we just say, all right, let's just have a baseline, you know, or what happened before we updated our website. And so from there, just going into those Google Analytics, you know, Facebook Insights, whatever email reporting pages, whatever it could be, and just start pulling in screenshots, embed those into what I'll show next. Someplace in here is a, and we'll send this presentation out as well as this, but we really didn't want it to be very complicated. We have a Microsoft Word document that's just, here's our campaign evaluation tool. You know, name, contact name, what's the company name? what's that campaign start date or evaluation time frame that makes sense? We just updated our website. We just created our website on September 1st. Okay, great. So let's look like we did on Seeks from September 1st through March 29th. And if you want to look at the website itself, you could start to put in, maybe fill in the blanks here, or just feel free to override all this and start pasting in some of that data. It could be just that simple. And repeating that for social media, email, all those things as you're kind of going through. We wanted it to be just this simple. You certainly could create very robust reports. Again, having this conversation at the 101 level for small businesses, I want to make sure that this is information is accessible for anybody, no matter what your skill sets are. But I'm also happy to take a deeper dive, for, as Sam was saying, for office hours next week and kind of help people through, or if you're too embarrassed to raise your hand and say, I don't even know how to get into my own Facebook page, or, I've got a question about how do I insert those tracking codes for my digital campaigns, kind of happy to help you walk through a lot of that stuff. Back to the presentation for a couple sort of wrap up slides here. And I've got some terms that, you can kind of look at over time. So again, that tool, well, actually a couple things. We'll send a copy of this presentation, a link to watch this again, the link to that YouTube for Google Analytics, since that's it sounded like most of you had updated your website or you're doing stuff in that environment. We'll send this fill in the blanks kind of report tool here. In addition to that, there's also a grant program survey that Sam and Autumn are going to send, and that'll be in a follow-up email just to ask overall, how do you feel about the grant program itself? And as you met Autumn earlier today, her contact information's here. She is the new Spencer, so happy to help us all, navigate the grant program itself, happy to help with the reporting, any questions you might have as we're kind of going through here. So I did want to leave at least a few minutes at the end, just to answer questions. Again, might be new for some, refresher for others. I hope it was at least informative. And as you're thinking about just in general, how's your business doing, with your digital footprint, or to create these reports, hopefully this is a little bit of a help anyway. Sam, anything I'm forgetting? We did a pregame on some of this just to make sure we covered all this stuff, but
I don't think so. So as Paul had noted, we'll have some follow-up materials based on video upload times. It'll probably come first thing tomorrow morning, so I can get this Zoom onto a YouTube account. If anything comes up before then, of course, reach out. Autumn, you see her face, you'll have her information, and please feel free to reach out. Like, we want, it's not just about, monitoring for a grant. This is about making sure that you have the tools you need to use these platforms effectively for your business. So that ultimately is the main priority. And we want to be flexible and work with you so that you see success. So
if we have specific questions, right? For example, Facebook, and there's a question about the analytics on that, we would go through Autumn, or do we, if we have a cumulative amount of questions, do we just set up an appointment to come in and sit down and go through it? I mean, what is?
Yeah, reach out to Autumn and we'll gauge from there. If it is something that we can answer effectively, but if the laundry list gets long, we can definitely set up a time to have some one-on-ones, open up a laptop, and walk everyone through, whoever. So. And Autumn, I'm going to talk a bit about what you've done in social media and marketing, just to contextualize that for folks.
So my background in social media marketing, I was at Saratoga National Golf Club for 5 years, and being the young person on staff, it was kind of pushed off into me. But we partnered with some really great marketing firms, and I learned a lot. We dove deeper into our Google Analytics and targeted Facebook and Instagram ads. And we really made an effort to start reviewing the impact all of our email marketing and just tracking everything so we could better target our dollars.
And if Autumn can't answer your question, Paul and I will also be here as a resource. Paul, that's that's his career. That's what he does. My background, I worked in marketing for 5 years at Glimmerglass Opera. So lots of experience between the three of us here.
Yeah, and it might be helpful also if you've got any questions whatsoever. I didn't understand what Paul was talking about. Can you tell me more about this? I wish I could dive into those Facebook insights. Send Autumn a note about that, if you don't mind, because if we've got a good critical mass for this kind of thing, I'll put her email address up again. If we've got critical mass and everybody wants to spend time on Facebook Insights, then happy to do this again. We could do another session and just focus on Facebook's, analytics and insights and kind of do a deeper dive there too. So.
Yeah, and kind of following up with what Paul just said, I do plan on sending out another survey sometime in the next 2 weeks. I have notes from Spencer with kind of where he was planning to go with the digital enlightening series. And I want to make a couple changes, and I want to make sure the programs we put together are what you guys would like to learn about and the resources you guys need. So that will be coming out shortly as well to get some feedback from all of you.
Awesome. Are there any other questions, comments? Anything we can help resolve before we finish out this recording? Okay, great. Well, I think I will go ahead and stop recording and we will go ahead and end. Thank you.